Laith, we know that, correct me if I'm mistaken, something like 200,000 people from the southern part of Lebanon were displaced during the war, during this sort of conflict in the southern part of Lebanon. And these people want to get back to their homes. Their homes have been destroyed, and many villages, ancient villages, were leveled by Israelis. They're bombing with their fighter jets, destroying everything, and they want to get back. And right now, by somehow legitimizing it, it's not. I think to legitimize the occupation, they have to ratify the agreement in the parliament. Without that, it's not possible to officialize this sort of agreement. Is that the case?
Yes, there's already challenges about the constitutionality of this whole, negotiations that Nawaf Salam and Joseph Aoun led, because it is unconstitutional from step one. The prime minister didn't seek a the right to begin negotiations. He has to convene the cabinet and vote on the negotiations, and then the cabinet has to give him the right to go ahead and negotiate on behalf of the nation, which he didn't do. Secondly, whatever comes as an agreement has to abide by the Constitution of Lebanon and the Taif Agreement. And the Taif of Agreement declares Israel as an enemy of the state of Lebanon. So how you're negotiating with the enemy of the state of Lebanon, and how you're negotiating directly? You could negotiate.
What's Taif agreement, Lay?
Yeah, so the Taif Agreement is the constitutional, compromise that came at the end of the quote-unquote civil war in 1990, where all the parties in Lebanon met in Taif in the Saudi kingdom, and kind of put in this temporary governance structures of the country, that the constitution that is governing who's going to be president, who's prime minister, and who's, the limitations of each office and so forth in the government. And so the Taif Agreement declares Israel as an enemy and an occupation, and that you shouldn't have any direct contact with them. This is why every time the negotiations used to happen between Lebanon and Israel, there was non-direct negotiations with a party in between them, like the US or the UN. They never meet in the same room. And what we saw is the ambassador of Lebanon to Washington, D.C., sitting in the same room with the Israelis and negotiating with them directly. So that's a violation of the constitution put in by the Taif Agreement in 1990 from step one. And finally, of course, anything that comes like this has to be ratified by the parliament, which is impossible given that the majority of parliamentarians will vote against it. So this agreement is unconstitutional from step one of the beginnings of the negotiations. It's still unconstitutional now, and is kind of dead at birth, right? So this is why it's the only thing that is doing right now, this agreement, is aiding in the propaganda war of the Zionists, but nothing else. And no facts can be made on the ground to bring this agreement without direct military confrontation and defeat of Hezbollah, which is not going to happen. Israel cannot bring this defeat into reality. The Lebanese military is not going to do it, and the United States, if it comes down here, will not be able to do anything better than the Israelis did already.
Yeah, the reconstruction of those cities and villages in the southern part of Lebanon, it's all dependent on disarmament of Hezbollah. It says in the agreement, and the government is somehow amazes me because let's assume they're somehow they're trying to get close to the United States and Israel and all of this and that. But after all, you have to be pragmatic to show something to Lebanese people. If you say something, disarmament of Hezbollah for reconstruction of Lebanon, that's impossible. It means that you never uh, achieve that. So what is that sort of mindset, and who's in? To my understanding, the government is trying to control everything, not, for example, to somehow put pressure on Hezbollah not to reconstruct the southern part of Lebanon because they want to get funds from other sources, basically from the United States. So that's the recipe for disaster for Lebanese people. Is that is there any sort of pragmatic solution for that, for what's going on in Lebanon?
Well, after the 2006 war, Hezbollah, with its allies, rebuilt all of the south of Lebanon and the Lahia, the southern suburb of Beirut, with zero money coming from the Lebanese government. So I don't think anyone in South Lebanon or in the Lahia is imagining that somehow this time the Lebanese government will do better, or the vast allies that it has behind it, that the French or the Americans or the Saudis will help in the rebuilding. That's not going to happen. So everybody is waiting for the cessation of hostility, and everybody knows already that it's going to be Hezbollah and its allies and the axis of resistance that are going to finance the rebuilding. And it's going to be a fast rebuild, just like happened in 2006. So in the meanwhile, even during the ceasefire of 2025, many villagers attempted to rebuild with their own money, and the government of Nawaf Salam blocked them. They sent police and the military to stop people from rebuilding their homes. And there was confrontations that happened between the villagers and the police and the military. So I think that is a clear example of what Nawaf Salam would do if there is a ceasefire, even if Hezbollah disarms, which it will not. Nawaf Salam will play politics with the rebuilding of people's homes and will block the Shia population from returning to the south. This is part of what the Israelis want. They want to change the demographics of the south of Lebanon, and the population will not allow that to happen.
Laith, one of the main reasons that Israelis and Americans and basically French they're putting pressure is the case of Hezbollah. It says that Hezbollah is not part of the government. Hezbollah is doing this and that. And when they look at the policies of Hezbollah and the way they're acting in Lebanon, do you think that, let's assume the occupation ends tomorrow, which is impossible in my opinion, what would happen to Hezbollah and the government in Lebanon? And what would be the combination of forces in Lebanon to make some sort of unified government? And I think the structure that we are witnessing right now, there is a lot of problem with the structure in Lebanon because it says the prime minister or the president should be a Christian, the head of parliament, a Muslim, something like that. This is first of all, you have to modify that. You have to adjust that, then go after other, you have to define a new structure for the political system, for the military of Lebanon. Is there any sort of discussions in that direction?
Yeah, there's been discussions since 2018 to change the constitution and the electoral process, make it that people can elect whoever they want to. They don't have to elect somebody from their own sect. And every time Hezbollah was pushing for these changes, the parties that are allied with the United States stood in the way and blocked it. What I expect to happen at the end of this war, when it ends, is that Hezbollah and the patriotic movements in the country will, have to make sure that those who betrayed Lebanon during the war will have to pay a price. So I think up until now, Hezbollah has been holding people back. There has been demonstrations almost on a daily basis, and Hezbollah is telling its followers not to go to the demonstrations because it doesn't want an internal clash in the country while there is an external enemy advancing in the south. But once the war is over, Nawaf Salam and Joseph Aoun will have to pay a price. And I think Hezbollah will, this time, unlike the year 2000, when it liberated Lebanon and chose to not take over the government, I think Hezbollah and its allies will take over the government and will force the changes that need to happen, so this doesn't keep on repeating the same problems that the country has. I don't know if there is any of the opponents of Hezbollah that will carry arms and try to stop it from doing so, but I don't think there's enough of them, these militias that are counter Hezbollah in the country, to be effective. And if they do fight back anything like that, they will be exposing themselves to decimation. So any grace that Hezbollah had at the end of the occupation in the year 2000 is going to be gone. And those who collaborated in the Lebanese government and helped in the killing of Lebanese civilians and members of Hezbollah, and by either coordinating with the enemy or giving them locations or what have you, will have to pay a price. This time it's not going to be just forgiveness for those who collaborated.
Laith, how do you find the case of Syria? There's some sort of movement in Iraq, and people are saying that they're trying to do some sort of manipulation in Iraq in order to weaken the acts of resistance. They're then motivating, these Syrian forces to do something in the northern part of Lebanon in order to diminish the Hezbollah influence in Lebanon, maybe trying to attack from both sides, from the northern part and from southern part of Lebanon. And what is your understanding of that?
Yeah, the situation in Iraq, obviously, the United States is trying to purge the country of the resistance, and it's not going to work. This is the problem for the US at this moment, is that its dreams are bigger than the reality. Okay, maybe a few years ago it could have happened, but now we have this whole huge shift. Also, the Iraqi military itself has been trained by Iran after the invasion by ISIS. The resistance groups like Al-Hashd al-Sha'bi, the popular mobilization units, are the ones that actually defeated ISIS with the help of Iran and Hezbollah. So trying to purge Al-Hashd al-Sha'bi using the local police forces or the military is a suicidal move. And either the Iraqi military or the police forces are ready for such a confrontation. This is why we saw over the last few days the concentration of attention by the new prime minister is to, capture and jail his political opponents, not leaders of militias or fighting groups, because that will trigger immediate response from those groups, and his military and police forces are not ready to do anything. And this is again why we heard the prime minister say that the PMU and Hezbollah Iraq and others have until mid-September to disarm. So between now and mid-September, who knows what's going to happen, how many wars would have passed by that point, and if Iraq is included in these wars, or what will Iran do if the Iraqi government continues to act in collaborationist manner. I don't think Iran will allow a new Saddam Hussein regime to be born in Iraq. So they'll, even if Iran doesn't like intervening in internal politics of countries, it will for sure not allow another Saddam Hussein to take control of the country. And we saw that in terms of when ISIS invaded Iraq, how the Iranian military moved. It wasn't just, an outside observer. It got involved in that fight. Syria is very fragile. Al-Julani cannot really do much to help the Israelis. even if he wanted to. There's an armed rebellion in the south of the country, in the Daraa region, where the Al-Julani stole his namesake. Al-Shara tribe or Al-Shara family are one of the biggest in the south of the country. They're very patriotic. And now he's letting them fall under bombardment by the Israelis. So even that branding of Al-Shara is going to now hurt him, because Al-Shara tribe is now victims of Israeli occupation and colonization. So the more he uses now the name Al-Shara, while the people that belong to that family are victims, the weaker he is. Okay, so that's one thing. There's also Al-Suwaida in the south, the Druze area that's out of control of Julani. You have many parts of the coast out of control. And if Al-Julani moves some of his troops to attack Lebanon, more parts of Syria will rebel. And there's also, by the way, for some of the viewers must understand this, that when the government of Bashar al-Assad collapsed in Damascus, many generals, Syrian generals, with their full armored vehicles and tanks, crossed both into Lebanon and into Iraq. There's around 30,000 Syrian officers and soldiers with their equipment in Iraq, and another around 50,000 of them are in Syria, and they've been quiet. But if there is an attack on either Iraq or Lebanon by Al-Julani and the Americans, these troops and these officers and their equipment will come into play. And so there's a lot of things that I think the Americans have not calculated correctly.
Laith, Israel is attacking Syria. Al-Julani is killing Syrian people. There are new factions of ISIS. They're actively fighting amongst each other. Who are these people? Who are these new factions in Syria? And how it seems to me that they were all together before coming to Damascus. They were all in Idlib. And right now they're fighting amongst each other. Who are these people? Are basically from Central Asia, from some parts of China?
Yeah, almost all of the foreign fighters have been extracted out of Syria already. There's a few left, but most of them have been extracted out of Syria by Turkey and sent to the Sahel and to Somalia region and to the Sudan region to continue with the slaughter that's happening there and destabilization of those countries on behalf of the US and Israel. This is partially why Al-Julani is now becoming weaker than he was. He doesn't have much of the foreign fighters left in the country. In terms of this theatrics about ISIS attacking the Julani soldiers in the desert, I think this is more theatrics because they need to give an excuse of why is Al-Julani not defending Daraa, where his Sharia family supposedly comes from. Well, he's just busy fighting ISIS. And there is no real fight between ISIS and Al-Julani. It's all the same. I like to call them chameleon militias or contras that just change their color and their patch on their shoulder depending on the day, the orders by the masters. So ISIS, HTS, Al-Qaeda, these are all the same intelligence manufactured organizations, and they just change colors as it goes. So in my mind, there is no real clashes between ISIS and HTS troops. It's just propaganda for media to give excuses of why Al-Julani is not defending the south of Syria from Israeli attacks and occupation. Finally, I would say when we are talking about the current troops that Al-Julani has under his command, there's around 70,000 of them. And that is not enough to even direct traffic in a country as big as Syria. So it's very, very a weak governance, and this is why the Turkish police and the Turkish military are the ones that are running the show in much of North Syria. There's literal police stations, Turkish police stations in the north of in Aleppo and in Idlib and so on, because Al-Julani can't even find enough staff to do that work.